Hey everybody, Star 6 Wars 1 here, and welcome to another anime review. For this one, we're going to be taking a look at the first season of Durarara. Now, a few things to preface for this review are that I'm well aware of the fact that Durarara has the same director, composer, writer, studio, and original creator as Bakano. Because this is a review of Durarara specifically, I will try not to compare Bakano to Durarara. However, I may bring up Bakano, or in some cases compare the two, if I have a point to make about Durarara. Another thing, because of the nature of Durarara, I will be going to some spoilers for this review. Also, I am only reviewing the first season of Durarara, as I have yet to see the second season, because as of the time of this recording, the second season is incomplete. I may review the second season at a later time, but for now, I'm only talking about the first season. With all that said, let's begin. The premise is about multiple different things. It's about Mikado, a new resident of Ikebukuro, and his life there with his two friends, Henri and Masomi, who each have darker secrets that they hide from each other. An information broker named Izaya, who seems to be at the heart of a lot of the trouble in Ikebukuro, and has his own hidden agendas only known to himself. Shizuo, who's a super strong man who seems to get into a lot of fights and absolutely hates Izaya. And Celti, a Dulahan who is searching for her head after losing it many years ago, as well as she is living with an underground doctor named Shinra, who is in love with her. To make a long story short, Durarara is about the people of Ikebukuro and their lives in the district. That's honestly the best way I could describe the premise, as that's exactly what it is. Nothing more and nothing less. The first half of Durarara's story focuses on one character per episode. Sure, there are more than one character in an episode, but the main focus is on one character and their interactions with the rest of the cast. The first 12 episodes also focuses on a subplot about a missing girl that is going on in the background, but till near the end of the subplot, it feels dull and uninteresting. The main problem with the story in the first half is actually how it's structured. For you to really like the first half, you have to be invested in all of the characters and their individual stories, as well as the subplots going on in the background. The problem is the characters are not always all that interesting, and makes for some very dull at best and annoying at worst episodes to sit through. Sure, it's got some great episodes here and there with some really interesting characters, but because of the lack of investment in the characters and its heavy reliance on character-based episodes, is what I think the first half's ultimate weakness is. That's only the first 12 episodes. The second half of the series goes in a different direction, which makes it both better in a sense of enjoyment and worse in overall storytelling. The second half goes for more story arcs than individual character episodes. Now, on a character level, this gives more characters a chance to shine, and it can give more interactions with cast members that may not have interacted with each other in the first half. They're more free to have more interactions with other characters and develop. This is a good thing because of Durarara's decently large cast. On the other hand, story-wise, Durarara, as I mentioned before, actually gets worse in the second half. The problem here is there is way too much going on at once, and the plots and subplots aren't well put together. The second half has two major plots, with 1 to 3 side plots going on per major story in the background. It feels like a clusterfuck of too many ideas happening at once, and many of them not getting the attention they deserve. On top of that, some kind of go nowhere and feel pointless in the grand scheme of things. I'll admit, though, I had more fun in the second half as I wasn't bored by it, unlike the first half, which had a lot of boring parts. But it comes at the price of a good, solid story, which, while boring, the first half had. Ultimately, the overall story, or stories, however way you want to look at it, is a huge mess. If it's not the mostly boring and dull, but has a solid story first half, then it's the clusterfuck, jumbled disarray of stories, but more fun second half. Overall, no matter how you look at it, the story is chaotic. When it comes to the characters of Durarara, it's a large character cast with around 30 plus named characters, all with varying degrees of importance to the anime. Some may be appearing for a minor role, others being members of the main cast. Now this can be either a really good or a really bad thing to do. For some positive examples of anime having large character casts but making it work, we have Bakano and Fullmetal Alchemist. In Bakano's case, almost all the characters are enjoyable to watch and rather likable in some way or another. In FMA's case, they take their time to give a lot of characters screen time and amazing characterization and development to have you fall in love with them. A bad example of a large character cast is Naruto. Naruto has one of the biggest cast of named characters I've seen, with around 212 named characters, including some filler arc characters. The problem is the character cast in Naruto is too big, even for a long-running shonen. There are many characters that don't get to shine and are left underdeveloped as a result. It also has the problem of being a hit-or-miss cast in general, and usually focus on the miss characters instead of the better hit ones. I find with Naruto, for every good/great character, there are at least 5 mediocre to bad characters. Sometimes more. Now, how does this explanation affect Durarara? Well, Durarara has a decently large character cast of around 30 plus named characters with varying degrees of importance, and like Naruto, I think Durarara is a bad example of a large character cast, but to a lesser extent than, say, Naruto's character cast. The major problem with Durarara's character cast as a whole is the same as Naruto's cast. They are very hit or miss. For example, in Durarara, I think we have 3 great characters in Izaya, Shizuo, and Celti, as well as 3 good characters in Shinra, Masomi, and Kyoe. The problem is the rest of the cast is all over the place, ranging from okay, to missed potential, to unimportant, to boring, and to outright bad. Now, 1 or 2 of these characters in a large cast are fine. Look at Fullmetal Alchemist with Frank Archer, and Bakano with Sylvie and Elmer. With Durarara, however, it's a majority of the cast that has this problem. To go into more detail, I'm going to go briefly into some of the more hit-or-miss characters of Durarara. First, we have the sort of main character Mikado. Most of Durarara has him either in the background or in the focus. For the first half of Durarara, he's just the shy, average kid until it's revealed in episode 11 that he is the founder of the Dollars. Now, there could be so much done with him after this, but as of the end of the first season, very little has been done to change his character. He kind of goes back to normal and only starts to change by the end of season 1. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if he was an interesting or entertaining character. The problem is, he is neither of those. Aside from his founding of the Dollars, nothing has stood out about Mikado, and he comes off as rather bland. I wanted to like Mikado. I really did. There could have been so much done with his character, but at least for this season of Durarara, I don't. Even among the bland characters, even Mikado doesn't compare to Henri. Henri is, by far, the most bland and boring character in Durarara. All she provides is being Mikado's love interest, being quiet and shy, and being a joke of, oh hey, this chick has big boobs, so let's point it out every other episode for over half the series. It's not till episode 17 where it's revealed that she is the true owner of Sayaga the Blade and has an admittedly tragic backstory. You'd think that would make her a more interesting character, but she's still so bland and boring, even after the reveal that I don't give a shit about her or her struggles. She could have been a great character, but because of her being dull and basically doing nothing for over half the series, she's instead one of the worst characters in Durarara. With the rest of the hit-or-miss characters, there's not really a whole lot to say about them. We got the sushi chef Simon, who's okay, but that's really it. Kyoe's group's alright, not bad, just not that great either. Kyoe himself I like and consider a good character, unlike some of the other characters, though even at times he can be kind of debatable. Tom kind of lacks presence for me. Shingen, aka Psycho Mantis, is wasted potential and could have done more for Durarara, I feel. Saki is just there, too bland to really like, but not as bad as Mikado and Henri. And finally, for my least favorite characters of Durarara Season 1, the Giri siblings and Miki Haruma, who I don't have a lot to say on, except I found all three of them annoying on top of their already bland personalities, and their relationship is fucking creepy. However, as I mentioned earlier, there are some redeeming factors to the characters. First, we got Masomi, who is the only one of the high school trio of Mikado, Henri, and Masomi that I fully like. Mostly because, unlike Mikado and Henri, Masomi isn't a totally bland character in the early episodes. Okay, his joking around can be cringeworthy at times, but he's pretty friendly and actually has a twist to him that adds to his character. Also, unlike Mikado and Henri, he isn't a bore to watch on screen. Thank God. He's not perfect, but I'll take him over Mikado and Henri any day. Next, we got the duo of Shinra and Celti. With Shinra, I actually don't have a lot to say about him. He's a pretty nice guy, though a bit of a wacko at times. I love his relationship with Celti. Beyond that, though, there isn't really much else to say about him. I think he's a good character in his own right, just kind of simple and not worth talking about. However, he pales in comparison to Celti. On a first glimpse of her character, Celti looks like a ruthless spiker with a cat-eared helmet. However, in reality, Celti is easily the most human member of the cast, and she's a Dullahan. Celti is very kind to many of the other characters despite her appearance. She's got an irrational fear of aliens and a rational fear of who has her head, since if it's burned or injured, it could kill her. She can be desperate to find her missing head as a result. She can kick serious ass when needed to, or when she's annoyed at someone, usually Shinra. She's the most sane, well, as sane as any Durarara can be, and on top of that, she's pretty down to earth, and again, she's a Dullahan. For those reasons, Celti is one of the best characters in Durarara. Next up on the roster is Shizuo. Upon Shizuo's introduction, we see him as a person with super strength and a very short temper. Despite that, we learn that, in fact, he doesn't like that this is his current condition. He doesn't like being the dreaded or someone that others will pick a fight with just to see if what they say about him is true. Most of the time, he just wants to do his own thing and actually hates fighting. The only exception is with his rival/enemy, Izaya, who he does want to fight if he gets involved with his life. Aside from his super strength and short temper, he's actually a pretty chill and nice guy when not provoked. I think what makes him one of the best characters as well as one of my favorite characters in Durarara is that he just fits so well with the rest of the cast and, unlike the main trio, isn't ever dull, and in fact, he's one of the most entertaining characters in Durarara. He provides a lot of entertainment and character to the anime, which is good given the rest of the cast's hit-or-miss status. Shizuo is one of the best characters in Durarara. Now time to talk of not only the best character, but my favorite character in Durarara, Izaya. Izaya is an extremely interesting and entertaining character. To describe him, he is an information broker as well as a huge troll. He more often than not plays every one of the cast for fools to satisfy his own needs and succeeds in his endeavors. He claims to love people but sees them as nothing more than his playthings, with very few exceptions. He loves to cause chaos when he can. He's usually the mastermind behind a lot of the events in the story, or if he isn't, he plays as the puppet master behind the scenes. If I was to compare him to two characters in comics, he'd be a combination of Lex Luthor and the Joker. Loves being in chaos and mischief wherever he goes, is in a position where no one can touch him legally, gets away with his plans scot-free, and outsmarts every other character at every turn. He's like if Lex Luthor and the Joker fused and was a part of an anime. Every moment he's on screen, Izaya is just a joy to watch, despite the fact that he's practically the villain of the series. Honestly, he's the best character in the inconsistent cast of Durarara. The art and animation for Durarara was made by Brainspace, who is also known for their work in the aforementioned Bakano, Penguin Drum, the first season of Oregaru, Hotabari no Miori, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and One Week Friends, to name a few. Not gonna lie here, the animation is pretty good, with a few hiccups here and there. The character design themselves is pretty well detailed, and you can distinguish most of the characters from each other most of the time, as there were a few times that some of the student characters kind of looked the same. Something that they did that I think was brilliant was that they made people that have no influence on the characters and story whited out, though you can tell that they are people. However, from a distance, the characters can look like blobs, and certain movements can look awkward sometimes. On another note, I gotta say the backgrounds look really well done. As someone who's been to Tokyo and the actual Ikebukuro, I feel the backgrounds capture what both areas look like very well. The coloring was also pretty good, and it has some nice lighting to distinguish morning, evening, as well as certain areas like the dark alleys. Overall, the animation is pretty good, with a few hiccups here and there when it comes to the character design, but it could have been much worse, so I'm not complaining. The OST was made by Makoto Yoshimori, who also made the OST for Koikaze, Bakano, as I mentioned in the intro, Hotabari no Miori, and the next season of Durarara. While watching the anime, aside from He's Such a Coward That He Can Laugh, which I call Izaya's theme, The Legend of the Strongest Man in Ikebukuro, basically Shizuo's theme, and Kokoro wo Shibaru I no Kotobaya, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, I didn't pay attention to the OST. That is, until I started writing this review. I wanted to listen to some of the OST on its own to give it a fair judgment, which is something I do for all my reviews. Most times, unless I like the sound of a track in the first few seconds, I tend to move past it. With Durarara, however, I listened to the entire OST from start to finish, and every song in full. Not only discovering other tracks I enjoy, like Russian Bodyguard, Ikebukuro West Exit 5-Way Intersection, On Tuesday Night, Dry Harbinger, The Sought After Extraordinary, and Green Memories, to name a few. I was actually surprised by how much I loved the OST. At first I wrote it off as an okay OST, but now it's become one of my favorite OSTs in anime. Now on to the two openings for Durarara. Now, back in my top 3 favorite anime openings, I mentioned that I hated the first opening of Durarara, which is still very true. To go into more depth as to what I mean when I said that, I hate how the first opening rides on the success of Bakano's opening. While the two openings are pretty different, as Bakano's opening is pretty much instrumental, whereas there is a song to Durarara's, and the setting and characters of both openings are different. Durarara does copy one of the most important parts to Bakano's opening, how it introduces its characters. Both use almost the same method to do this. For Bakano, I find it works because of the structure of the anime, and how Bakano's characters were, as it introduced hints as to what they were like. Also, the cast being very likable and memorable helps. Whereas with Durarara, all it feels like is a carbon copy of the opening trying to do the same thing but falls flat. It felt like it was actively trying to be Bakano's opening, which made it feel unoriginal to me. Part of my dislike also may be because I don't like all the characters in Durarara, unlike Bakano, but I still felt it was a weaker opening than Bakano's opening. Even without the comparison though, I still don't like the opening. I think that the song gets grating after a while and I find it unpleasant to listen to. I also just don't like the style of the opening even without the Bakano comparison. I felt underwhelmed when seeing its visuals, and it just kind of bored me when it wasn't annoying me. However, when it comes to it, the second opening, I really love it, which is odd as, like the first opening, it has a similar feel to Bakano's opening as well, but it feels like it's trying to be its own opening and not a carbon copy. Hence why it, I believe, has a charm to it that I feel the first opening lacked for me. I also like the song a lot more than the previous opening, which gave it good points as well. Plus, I wasn't bored by the visuals this time, and it made me excited to see each episode ahead, which is what an opening should do. Ultimately, I hate the first opening, but love the second opening. Like the openings, there are two ending themes as well. Both endings are pretty similar, both only featuring characters and color changing. The main difference is that the first ending has the characters coming up vertically, whereas the second ending, they go horizontal, and the songs change. Gonna be honest, I like the first ending over the second one. I think I just prefer the song of the first opening over the second. And it makes me excited to see the next episode, which the second ending theme doesn't. In short, it's a complete reversal of my thoughts on both openings. While I prefer the second opening over the first opening, I prefer the first ending theme over the second one. Now, should you go into Durarara subbed or dubbed? Firstly, I gotta say the sub for Durarara is pretty good. From what I heard of the sub, which is admittedly not that much, it seems to be pretty solid across the board, with no performance being bad. As for the dub, it was made by Bang Zoom, which has a very hit-or-miss track record when it comes to dubs. Some of their dubs can be really good, like Gurren Lagann's and The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya's dubs. However, they can also make really bad ones like Madoka Magica and Higarashi's dub. Luckily for Durarara, the dub is pretty good. Most of the voices seem to work with the characters. Special mention goes to Crispin Freeman, Kari Walgern, again I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and Johnny Bosch for their performances as Shizuo, Celti, and Izaya respectively. However, not all the voices work, and one or two come in a bit flat, specifically Michelle Ruff as Henri, who didn't do a good job as her, even though I don't think she really would have helped Henri's character anyways. Besides the point. That aside, it's pretty good dub. As for which one you should go for, since both are pretty good, I just go with your personal preferences. Both sub and dub are well done. Durarara is an oddball for me. I have such mixed feelings towards it. Like, it does a lot I like. The OST is fantastic. The second opening and first ending theme are great. The animation is really good when it wants to be. And Izaya, Shizuo, and Celti make the anime worth at least a watch. However, as I've said in the past, good animation and sound can only get you so far without a good story or characters, and in a lot of those two areas, Durarara needs to get them right, and it doesn't. The story is either solid but boring, or a mess but entertaining, so either way, the story isn't good, and the hit-or-miss cast can really hurt my enjoyment of the anime, especially in the first half. Because of all this, Durarara has been one of the most frustrating anime to solidify my opinion of. However, after much thought, I would ultimately say that I like Durarara, but I don't think it's a very good anime overall. Well, it doesn't have the biggest amount of issues. The issues it has are huge ones that can overshadow its better aspects, and as I've said before, animation and sound can only get you so far without a good story or characters, and ultimately, I don't think Durarara has a good story and not enough good characters to be called good. As for my recommendation for it, I recommend you proceed with caution on this one. While not all bad, its bad parts can hurt enjoyment for the anime, and for some of the good aspects of it may not be enough to fully recommend it. Anyways, that's all from me. This has been Star 6 Wars 1, and I'll see you guys next time.